What's up, everyone? My name is Ethan. Welcome to Splash City. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get into it. So today, we're continuing along with our offseason preview series. Today, taking a look at the Memphis Grizzlies. We are finished with all the teams that are in the lottery, and now we're moving on to playoff teams from this year. So we finished, we're 14 teams along. This will be the 15th, so we're about halfway through all these offseason previews. We're just going to keep going here, and we're going to go in order that teams were eliminated. So that's why I did the lottery first, and now we're going to be doing first-round loss teams. So here's the Grizzlies. They made the playoffs. An impressive feat, definitely making their way through the play-in tournament, being able to snag that 8th spot in the Western Conference, and they had a really great season. This is a solid team overall. They've got a lot of youth, a lot of, really nice young talent. They draft super well. They're really well coached, and the front office absolutely knows what they're doing. So this offseason for them is not really a ton for them to be doing. They don't really have any free agents at all. We'll get to that in a second, but they could basically just run this same exact team back next year, and it's looking like they don't really need to make any changes, any huge changes, because they're on a great path back to being a really good team here pretty quickly. The Grizzlies really do have the best of both worlds right now because they are young and good, and you can't get much better than that in the NBA. Obviously, they're not like championship contenders right now. They're not like competing for the NBA Finals, but they're still a good quality roster. They put a fun, competitive basketball product on the floor, and they've got a lot of guys who are going to be around on this team for a long time, for future franchise cornerstones, guys that you can build your team around. And it seems like they like the city, they want to stay, and you've got these young stars who are just really embracing the culture and the real feeling of this team, which is something that every other team in the league should probably be jealous of, because the Grizzlies really do have something special going on here, and they've built this team incredibly well over the last couple of years during this rebuild. Pretty much all the moves that they've made, they haven't really lost any trades. They've hit on pretty much every single draft pick, and they're just in a really good spot right now. So let's look at this cap sheet. Like I said, no free agents, not a single one. The only guy who could be is Justice Winslow. There's a team option there for $13 million, and that's kind of up in the air, as to what they want to do with him. But if they pick that up, they can basically just bring the same exact team back, because they have nobody else who needs to be extended, nobody else who needs to be re-signed. They just basically can have the same exact roster for next year. So we'll see what they do. They could potentially turn down that Winslow option, let him go into free agency. Obviously, there might be some trades to be made, and they're gonna be active in the draft presumably. So it's not gonna be the same exact roster going into next year, but it can be pretty similar. They can bring back almost their entire rotation, or the entire rotation if they want to, and we'll see what they end up doing. But there really is not a ton that they need to or have to do. Jonas Valanciunas is entering the final season of his deal. He's at $14 million exactly for next season. He's a really good player. He's come a long way over the past couple of years. He's really found his stride with the Grizzlies. I think he's been super underrated over the past couple of years. He's a big that he can score at all three levels. He's got a pretty decent jump shot. He's able to get to the free throw line. He's able to bully you down low and stuff like that. Valanciunas is just good, and he's also good defensively. He's just a very solid overall NBA big man. So I like Valanciunas a lot. I guess you could potentially do a trade for him, maybe if you're getting something really nice back. But honestly, I'd try to, give him an extension when he comes to be a free agent, and I'll try to keep him around on this team, because, he is a little bit older than maybe some of your young core guys, but I think he's still going to be productive for a couple of years, and I think he's a guy that you want to keep around. So let's talk about Justice Winslow for a second. We kind of know his story, right? The Grizzlies are sort of banking on him, fulfilling some of that potential that he had early on in his career and coming into the draft, because we know the thing where the Celtics were kind of willing to give up a ton of draft picks to move up and select Justice Winslow, but trade falls through there, they don't make the move, and he goes to Miami. And he was, pretty good in Miami for his first couple of years in the NBA. It felt like, okay, this guy has some potential. He's going to be able to make good on some of this promise that he had in the draft and stuff like that. Dealt with some injuries early on in his career, especially last season. He dealt with a ton of injuries with the Heat, didn't play much, and then he was traded to Memphis and didn't play at all last season, for the second half of the year when he was with the Grizzlies. This season, he only appeared in 26 games and averaged almost 7 points. The shooting splits aren't great, and the efficiency is not quite there, and he didn't really get a ton of minutes. So we'll see what happens with Justice Winslow. Like I said, I think the Grizzlies are hoping that he kind of turns in some of that potential and ends up being the player that a lot of people thought that he could be. The ship has maybe sailed on him, really becoming like an all-star, as some people has projected him and stuff like that. He's 25 years old and dealt with injury. It's probably not going to happen for him at this point, but I still think he can be an effective rotation guy, and he might be worth, another look by Memphis. So if they don't really have any other plans for, turning his option down and signing somebody else in free agency, because they probably will have a little bit of cap space, not a ton, but they can, do a little bit with their cap space. Whether or not they want to maybe trade that deal by picking up that option and see what you can get back for that. But it was a good trade at the time, bringing him in for effectively Andre Iguodala, Jay Crowder, both veterans who didn't really fit the timeline of the team. And so you get Justice Winslow in that deal, and I think it was a good move, a good, high risk, high reward type move. And if it doesn't end up panning out, it's not the end of the world, because like I said, Iguodala and Jay Crowder didn't really mean much to the team, and they were both free agents. It's not like they were going to re-sign anyway. So getting Justice Winslow is not a bad idea, and if it doesn't end up panning out, it's okay. It's not going to be that bad. So we'll see what they do with him. I wouldn't be shocked either way, picking up or declining that option. I think most reports have them declining it and letting him entering free agency, but we'll see on that one. So Dillon Brooks and Kyle Anderson, both are potential trade guys. I'll throw Tyus Jones in there as well. All three making a decent amount of money. Dillon Brooks at 12, Kyle Anderson at 10, and Tyus Jones at about 7.5. They're all three good players. Dillon Brooks was great in the postseason. He, was really good defensively. His shot was kind of hot and cold, but he made some shots when they needed him to. And he was kind of getting under the opponent's skin a little bit, riling up the fans. And, he was just really effective. And you kind of need that in the playoffs, right? A tough-nosed defender who's kind of going to get under your skin and make the opponent have to think about it. He's not a perfect player, right? He sometimes takes some ill-advised shots with the game on the line that he shouldn't necessarily be taking. And sometimes he's kind of streaky and gets through these cold stretches and stuff and doesn't hit a lot of shots. But Brooks is still good. I expect that they'll keep him around. He's too valuable to this team to trade at this point, and the $12 million salary I think is very fair for a guy like him. Kyle Anderson could potentially be a trade guy. I think if you're looking for the most likely guy to be moved, it's probably him, considering that if you have to, either dump that salary to potentially sign somebody in free agency, or if you want to, do a salary matching trade for a different player who's making a little bit of money, Kyle Anderson is the obvious guy to move, given that he's on the expiring contract and he's a good player, but he's obviously not essential. And then Tyus Jones is a good backup point guard option. He's a very solid player, doesn't make a lot of mistakes when he's on the floor. His numbers are really good. I like Tyus Jones a lot, and on that $7.5 million, I think that's a very fair deal for him. He's going to be expiring as well this coming season. Certainly not off the table when it comes to trade talks, but I think he's a guy that they'll probably want to keep. Let's talk about Ja Morant for a second. He is franchise cornerstone. He leveled up his play immensely going into the postseason, and he's going to be a guy who sticks around for many years to come. He's entering an extension season. After this coming season, he will sign his extension on his rookie deal, and looking like it's going to be for the rookie max. You keep him in Memphis for a lot more years because he's just really good, and he's perfect for the fans and the passion of this city. So Ja Morant is certainly a keeper, and he's just been sensational for them. De'Anthony Melton is another guy who is on a very manageable contract. He could potentially be traded down the line. Don't expect it to happen this offseason. He's only 23, still very young, still getting better, and he is, one of the more underrated players in the NBA. A lot of people have talked about him over the past few years, but he kind of came out of nowhere. But he's just an overall rock-solid guy. Good find by the Grizzlies there, being able to get him in, and I just like the way he plays. He's tough. He knows what to do. He's smart. He totally fits with what this team wants to do as well. They just got all these young guys, guys under 24, 25, who are just really solid, smart basketball players who play the game the right way, and they've been well coached by Taylor Jenkins. But De'Anthony Melton just is another one in the long list of guys that the Grizzlies have, found diamonds in the rough there. So good scouting work by them. Jaren Jackson Jr., he is extension eligible this offseason, and this is an interesting one to watch because we have recently seen some reports that they're not completely sold on him as a part of the future of this franchise. I kind of doubt those, to be honest. I think he's a guy that they are going to want to keep around, and it makes sense, why those things are coming out right now, given that he is entering the extension talks portion, and he wasn't healthy this past season, and when he was on the court, he wasn't super great. He only played 11 games this year, after that meniscus injury that he had in the bubble, and he wasn't great, like I said, when he was on the court. So, it's a weird time for him to be signing an extension. He might want to wait until restricted free agency next summer. He could potentially potentially earn himself more money if he plays well this year, but there's also the risk of obviously losing some if he gets hurt again or if he's not as good. I like Jaren Jackson as a player. He's only 21. He's a unique guy as to where he's almost 7 feet tall. Maybe he is actually 7. He's close, right? And is a big guy who can really shoot. Like, he is actually a genuinely good shooter. I've seen him play in person. His first summer league, his first year he was in the NBA. I watched him in summer league, and he had like a half-court buzzer beater at the end of the half, and I was like, dang, this guy's gonna be good. I think I've told that story on this channel before. But Jaren Jackson is just a guy who is a little bit polarizing for some people. Like I said, it's a weird time for him to sign an extension given that he struggled this past season, but I do think that he should be a part of the future of this team. I really like him, and I think he fits well with Ja Morant. So I'm not sure if the extension will get done this offseason. They might want to wait until next year, just given the injury thing from this past season, but I'm not super concerned about their ability to retain him. If things get ugly, we could see a trade start to materialize, maybe this offseason or before the deadline, if extension talks turn sour. That could maybe be something to watch, but as of right now, I'm expecting him to return to the team. Couple of other young players down here. Brandon Clark had a great rookie season. He was considered one of the steals of the draft. He was solid his sophomore year, didn't really make a lot of improvements. He was relatively the same player from his rookie season, and kind of fell out of the rotation by the end of the year. I'm not super concerned about that, though. A lot of people are like, oh, Brandon Clark has fallen off a cliff. I think he's still good. He's only 24, a little bit older for a guy in his second, going into his third season, but I think he's still, part of the future plans, and he's just one of the many young guys on this roster. They can afford if he doesn't pan out, but as of right now, I'm still expecting that he's going to continue to be an effective NBA player, even if he kind of was on a downward trend by the end of last season. We'll see how things go for him. Grayson Allen is going to be extension eligible as well. We'll see what they give him. I wouldn't be shocked to see him get a nice little payday. He improved a lot. This year I thought he was pretty good. His shot's been going in a little bit more recently. He's become a more effective all-around player since he was, a little bit younger in the NBA. We'll see what an extension for Grayson Allen looks like, if they even give one to him this offseason, and, they might wait for another year. He could also be a trade guy. If you're wanting to maybe upgrade somewhere, you could package a Grayson Allen, Kyle Anderson, Tyus Jones, something like that, and get a pretty decent player with just those 3 pieces, maybe throw a pick in there as well. So we'll see with Grayson Allen, but I could see it going either way with him. He would maybe be a trade candidate, but if not, he's a solid player to keep around. Couple of other younger guys down here: John Conchar, Desmond Bane, Jonte Porter, Xavier Tillman, all signed for the next couple of seasons. I think all these guys are going to stick around. Conchar was a nice find for them. He can really play. After finding him, I think he was in the G League for a little bit, not a couple of two-way contracts, but locking him up for a couple of years at a very cheap deal is good. Desmond Bane was a really nice find in the early second round, I believe, 31st overall pick. I liked him in the draft a lot. I was surprised that he didn't go in the first round, honestly, and he's just a really solid player, 23 years old only, and he was really good in his rookie season. Jonte Porter has not played much, if I'm correct. Let me look at this, actually. Only 11 games this year, only under 5 minutes when he played, so not a ton of experience on court for Jonte Porter, but we know, brother of Michael Porter Jr., had a lot of potential, but he's dealt with injuries as well, just like his brother, and the Grizzlies are taking a chance by bringing him in. He signed for the next couple of seasons. He could be a guy that's maybe cut in camp if they want to get a different guy under that roster spot. Could be thrown into a trade somewhere else and maybe cut at his new destination. Who knows? I don't think his roster spot is secure by any means, but he's nice to have if he ends up panning out at only $2 million. We'll see if he ends up doing anything, but it's a low-risk, high-reward move for the Grizzlies. Xavier Tillman, another guy who, was drafted late and has really been effective his rookie season. That's just a theme with this Grizzlies team. Xavier Tillman, Desmond Bane, John Conchar, Brandon Clark, DeAnthony Melton, all these guys that they find off the scrap heap just end up turning into really good players. And Xavier Tillman had some big moments in the play-in game and in the first round of the playoffs and stuff. And so he's just a guy who, another great find by the Grizzlies scouting team. They just churn these guys out. They're becoming the Raptors at this point. I mean, it's just kind of ridiculous how effective they have been at finding guys on the margins. It's just really, it's hard to match. A couple of two-way guys down here. Killian Tilly is one who has dealt with some injuries and stuff on his journey to the NBA, and he probably would have been drafted if he wasn't hurt during college, but the Grizzlies get him on a 2-way contract, see if he can do anything if he can ever get healthy. Didn't play much this past year, but another high ceiling guy that might pan out a little bit, and if not, who cares? Sean McDermott, isn't he the coach of the Buffalo Bills? That's an NFL reference for you there. This is a different Sean McDermott, though. He's actually not the brother of Doug McDermott, from what I can find, even though they do kind of look alike. He's okay. Can shoot a little bit. Only averaged like 2 points a game. Didn't play much. So, he doesn't really matter a ton. If they want to bring him back, they can. But not the end of the world either way. It's just kind of funny that his name is Sean McDermott, because that is an NFL coach. So, I mean, that's pretty much all for the Grizzlies. They don't really have any huge moves to make. The biggest decision is going to be the team option on Justice Winslow. Other than that, they have the 17th pick in the draft. I assume they're going to find another really good player. This year's draft is deep. There's a lot of really talented prospects, even that late after the lottery. They can add a really nice player to this roster. So we'll see what they do. I don't think they necessarily need to draft for position or need or anything like that. Just take the best player available, or the guy you feel like has the best chance of panning out. And they can afford to be a little bit patient too. They can take a guy with a high ceiling that might not be ready right away, because they already have a lot of young guys on this team who can contribute. And if they have one who needs a couple of years to really be ready, that's okay, because they're not looking to step into contention for right away. It's going to be a couple of seasons for the Grizzlies. Even though they're a good team right now, they're not going to really be competing for a title for probably 2 to 3 years at least. So we'll see what they do, but they 17th is a nice selection there. They also have a second round pick at 51, so maybe that's they can trade that or something, or maybe draft a player that late. We'll see what they do. But yeah, pretty much just stay the course for Memphis. They don't really need to worry about making any huge trades. If there is a trade, it's probably Kyle Anderson, maybe Grayson Allen or Tyus Jones or something like that. But like I said, don't really have to worry too much about that. Just kind of sticking with it and continuing to build through the draft and free agency, because this team is clearly very good at it. And that's all I have on the Memphis Grizzlies. Like I said at the top of the video, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, ring the bell if you want to. Leave a comment letting me know what you guys think about the Grizzlies, their offseason, their plans. Would love to hear your thoughts down below. But with all that said, I'll see you guys in the next one.